Welcome to Wild HOA Situations. She printed the accusation before she checked the facts. You just earned yourself a hearing, Allison Drake shouted at me across the mailbox cluster, waving a clear sleeve with a clipboard inside like she was serving a warrant. I had just clocked out from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, still in my blue work jacket with the hood up, because the February wind in Salt Lake City does not care about your day. She was already moving toward me, her tan trench coat flapping, her light brown layered bob swinging with each step. Karen yelled that my only option was to pay and be quiet. I stopped walking. The locked cash box from the charity table in the clubhouse lobby had vanished 2 days ago, and now she was in my face claiming a torn package with my address on it had been found opened near my parking spot. That was her proof. A ripped mailer. I am a nurse. I work night rotations. I do not have time to steal charity money, and I definitely do not have the energy to argue with the social committee chair of the Cedar Springs Homeowners Association. But here I was. She held up a printed sheet, the kind with rows and columns, and jabbed her finger at a highlighted line. A gate fob is reported missing, and Karen says I must have cloned it, she announced loud enough for the neighbors unloading groceries 3 spots over to hear. The fob thing had happened a week ago. Someone in the office claimed a spare fob went missing from the lockbox behind the front desk, and Allison decided I was the culprit because I had requested a replacement fob the month before when mine stopped working. Her logic was a perfect circle. I needed a fob. A fob went missing. Therefore, I stole it and cloned it to sneak into restricted areas and steal things. She did not have a shred of proof, but she did have a folder organizer with expanding pockets stuffed with printed forms, and she pulled another one out. "This is your violation notice," she said. "You signed the covenants, now you live the covenants." I took the paper. It was a standard Cedar Springs HOA compliance form, the kind with a header that says violation notice in bold letters but no actual signatures at the bottom. The accusation section had 3 checkboxes, and all 3 were marked: unauthorized access, theft of association property, and refusal to cooperate with investigation. The last one made my jaw tighten. I had cooperated. I gave them my work schedule, my parking logs, even my doorbell camera footage showing I was not home the night the cash box disappeared. Allison had looked at none of it. Instead, she printed this form, checked all the boxes, and decided I was guilty. The fine listed at the bottom was $250, due in 5 days, with a note that failure to pay would result in a lien. I looked up at her. "I did not take anything," I said. She smiled. "That is what they all say. You have 5 days to cure, and if you do not, I will personally ensure your hearing goes on record. If you fight me, I will make it worse." I walked back to my unit with the notice folded in my pocket and a knot in my stomach. My girlfriend Sarah had been asking me all week if the HOA thing was resolved, and I had been telling her it was fine, but it was not fine. She worked remotely and heard every argument I had on the phone with the management office. The stress was constant, and it was starting to crack us. I dropped my keys on the counter and pulled out my phone. I needed to document everything, starting now. I opened my notes app and typed the date, the time, and a summary of what Allison had just said. Then I went back through my messages and found the email I had sent the management company 3 days ago with my doorbell footage attached. They had not responded. I called the office. The line rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I left a message asking for confirmation that they received my footage and requesting a copy of the access logs for the clubhouse the night the cash box went missing. I hung up and sat down on the couch. Sarah walked in from the bedroom. "What now?" she asked. I showed her the notice. She read it and her face went pale. "They cannot do this," she said. "They can," I said. "They are doing it." The next morning I woke up to 3 missed calls from a number I did not recognize. I called it back. A man answered. "This is Ben from Apex Towing," he said. "We have a request to tow a vehicle registered to your address." I sat up. "What vehicle?" "A black sedan," he said, and he read off my license plate. I told him my car was parked legally in my assigned spot and asked who requested the tow. He paused. "The HOA social chair," he said. "She called us this morning and said the vehicle was in violation of overnight guest parking rules." I told him I lived here, that it was my assigned spot, and that I had never parked in guest spaces. He sighed. "Look," he said, "I am just the dispatcher. If you want to dispute it, you need to call the management office. But we have the work order, and if we show up and the vehicle is there, we are taking it unless you have proof it is your spot." I asked him how long I had. He said the truck was already on the way. I hung up, threw on clothes, and ran outside. My car was still there. I took photos of the parking spot number, the curb paint, and my registration sticker. Then I called the management office again. This time someone picked up. "Cedar Springs. This is Monica," she said. I explained the tow situation. She put me on hold for 2 minutes, then came back. "I am showing a note here that your vehicle was flagged for review," she said. I asked by who. She hesitated. "The social committee," she said. I asked what rule I was violating. She said she did not have details and that I needed to attend the compliance hearing scheduled for next week. I told her a tow truck was on the way right now. She said she would send an email to the towing company asking them to hold off until the hearing. I asked if that was binding. She said it should be. I thanked her and hung up. The tow truck pulled into the lot 10 minutes later. I walked over. The driver got out, a middle-aged guy in a reflective vest with a clipboard. He looked at me, then at my car. "You the owner?" he asked. I said yes. He nodded. "I got the email from the management office," he said. "They are asking us to hold off. But I am putting this in my report. The vehicle is here. It is in a marked spot, and the HOA did not provide proof of a violation." He handed me a pink carbon copy of the work order. "Keep that," he said. "If they try this again, you have documentation that we were here and found no violation." I thanked him. He climbed back into the truck and left. I stood there holding the pink slip and feeling my blood pressure spike. Allison had tried to tow my car with no legal basis, and the only thing that stopped it was a dispatcher who happened to call me first and a management office employee who sent an email. If any of those things had not happened, my car would be in a tow yard right now and I would be paying hundreds of dollars to get it back. I went back inside and started digging. I needed to understand what Allison was doing and how she was getting away with it. I pulled up the Cedar Springs HOA website and logged into the resident portal. The portal had a document section with copies of the covenants, the bylaws, and the violation policy. I downloaded all of them and started reading. The violation policy was clear. Any compliance action required written notice, a cure period of at least 10 days, and a hearing before the full board if the violation was not cured. Allison had given me 5 days, not 10. I highlighted that section and saved it. Then I went to the portal's access log feature. Cedar Springs had installed a digital gate system 2 years ago, and residents could log in to see when their fob was used. I clicked on my account. The log showed every time I had swiped in or out for the past 6 months. I scrolled to the night the cash box disappeared. My last swipe was at 6 in the morning when I left for work. The cash box was reported missing around 8 that evening. I took a screenshot. Then I clicked on the admin panel link at the bottom of the page. It asked for a password. I tried my resident password. Access denied. I tried the guest password listed in the welcome packet. Access denied. I logged out and called the management office again. Monica answered. I asked if residents could request access logs for other units. She said no. That was restricted to board members and management staff. I asked if I could request a printed copy of the clubhouse access log for a specific date. She said I could submit a records request in writing, and they would respond within 10 business days. I thanked her and hung up. If you are enjoying this level of HOA chaos, hit that like button and subscribe because it gets so much worse. That afternoon, I sat down and wrote a formal appeal. I cited the 10-day cure period in the violation policy and attached my doorbell footage, my work schedule, and the access log screenshot showing I was not on property when the theft occurred. I printed 3 copies, one for the management office, one for Allison, and one for my records. I drove to the management office and hand-delivered the first copy to Monica. She stamped it received and gave me a receipt. Then I drove to the clubhouse. Allison was there, sitting at a folding table in the lobby with a rolling cart next to her. The cart had 3 binders on it, each labeled with a different color strip of tape but no readable text. She looked up when I walked in. I handed her the appeal. She took it, flipped through the first page, and set it down without reading the rest. This does not change anything, she said. You are still required to pay the fine and attend the hearing. I told her the policy required 10 days, not 5. She smiled. The policy also says the board can shorten the cure period in cases of safety or theft, she said. This qualifies. I asked to see that section in writing. She pulled one of the binders off the cart, opened it to a page with highlighted text, and held it up for 2 seconds before closing it again. You can request a copy through the management office, she said. I took a photo of the binder's color strip and thanked her. She waved me off. You signed the covenants. Now you live the covenants, she said again. I left the clubhouse and sat in my car. I was shaking. Allison had just invented a rule on the spot, claimed it was in the binder, and refused to let me verify it. I called the management office and asked Monica if the board could shorten the cure period. She said she would have to check with the board president and get back to me. I asked who the board president was. She said his name was Greg and that he was out of town until next week. I asked if there was a vice president. She said Allison was the acting administrator while Greg was gone. I hung up and stared at the steering wheel. Allison was running the show, and there was no one in the office willing to push back. I started the car and drove home. Sarah met me at the door. The HOA posted something on the community board, she said. I pulled out my phone and opened the Cedar Springs resident app. There was a new post from Allison. Time-stamped 20 minutes ago. The post was titled Community Safety Alert, and it had 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph said a resident was under investigation for theft and unauthorized access. The second paragraph said the resident had refused to cooperate and was now appealing the violation. The third paragraph said all residents should be vigilant and report any suspicious activity to the social committee immediately. My name was not in the post, but everyone would know it was me. The comments were already filling up. Someone asked which building. Someone else said they heard it was the nurse who worked nights. A third person said they always thought I looked sketchy. I closed the app and threw my phone on the couch. That night I could not sleep. I kept replaying the conversations in my head, trying to figure out what I was missing. Allison had no proof, but she was acting like she had a smoking gun. The torn package near my parking spot was not enough. Anyone could have put it there. The missing gate fob was not enough. There was no evidence I had cloned it or even touched it. The cash box was not enough. My access log proved I was not there. So why was she so confident? I got out of bed and opened my laptop. I went back to the resident portal and clicked through every menu option. Most of it was standard: documents, payment history, maintenance requests, community calendar. Then I found a section I had not noticed before: committee files. I clicked it. The page loaded with a list of subfolders: architectural review, landscape, social, finance. I clicked social. Inside were dozens of PDFs, all labeled with dates and resident initials. I opened the most recent one. It was a complaint form, identical to the violation notice Allison had given me. Same header, same checkboxes, same layout. But this one was for a different resident. Someone with the initials TM. The accusation was unauthorized modifications to exterior paint. The fine was $300. The cure period was 5 days. I opened another file. Same form, different resident, different accusation. 5-day cure period. I opened 10 more. Every single one had a 5-day cure period. Every single one was signed by Allison. None of them had a signature from the board president. I took screenshots of all of them and saved them in a folder on my desktop labeled Evidence. Then I went back to the portal and clicked on the Finance subfolder. Inside was a single PDF labeled Ledger Export. I opened it. It was a spreadsheet with columns for date, description, amount, and account. I scrolled down. Most of the entries were routine: landscaping payments, utility bills, maintenance contracts. Then I saw a line that made me stop. The description said petty cash replenishment, and the amount was $200. The date was 3 days after the cash box went missing. I took a screenshot. Then I kept scrolling. 2 months earlier, there was another petty cash replenishment for $150. 3 months before that, another one for $100. I went back a full year. There were 8 petty cash replenishments, all between 1 and 3 months apart, all for amounts between $100 and $250. I did the math. Over 12 months, the HOA had replenished petty cash 8 times for a total of just under $1,500. That was not normal. Petty cash is supposed to cover small purchases like stamps or light bulbs, and it gets replenished maybe once or twice a year. 8 times meant something was draining it constantly. I closed the laptop and sat back. Allison was not just framing me. She was stealing. And she had been doing it for at least a year. The missing gate fob, the missing cash box, the constant petty cash replenishments, the identical complaint forms with shortened cure periods. It was all part of the same pattern. She would take something, blame a resident, collect a fine, and use the chaos to cover her tracks. And because she was acting as administrator while the board president was gone, no one was checking her work. I needed more proof. The screenshots were good, but I needed something concrete that tied Allison to the thefts. I opened my email and drafted a message to Monica at the management office. I asked for a copy of the clubhouse security camera footage from the night the cash box disappeared. I sent it and went to bed. The next morning I woke up to a reply. Monica said the clubhouse cameras had been offline for maintenance that week and there was no footage available. I stared at the email. The cameras had been offline. Of course they had. I replied and asked when they went offline and when they came back online. She responded an hour later. The cameras went offline the day before the cash box disappeared and came back online 2 days after. I asked who authorized the maintenance. She said the social committee chair had submitted a work order. I closed my email and called Sarah into the room. "Look at this," I said. She read the email chain and her eyes went wide. "She took the cameras offline," Sarah said. I nodded. She took the cameras offline, stole the cash box, framed me with a torn package, and now she is collecting fines to cover it up. Sarah sat down. "What are you going to do?" she asked. I said I was going to the hearing and I was bringing everything. The hearing was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 6 in the evening in the clubhouse conference room. I spent the weekend organizing my evidence. I printed the access log screenshot, the email chain about the cameras, the ledger export showing the petty cash replenishments, and all 10 complaint forms with the 5-day cure periods. I put everything in a blue 3-ring binder with tabs for each section. I also printed a copy of the violation policy with the 10-day cure period highlighted. On Monday, I got a call from Monica. She said the hearing had been moved up to Monday at 7 because Allison wanted to resolve it before the board president returned. I told her that did not give me enough time to prepare. She said the notice had been posted on the resident portal and that I should have checked it. I asked when it was posted. She said that morning. I told her that was not proper notice and that I was filing a formal complaint. She sighed and said she would note it in the file. I hung up and called Sarah. They moved the hearing to tonight, I said. She said she would leave work early and come with me. We arrived at the clubhouse at 6:45. The conference room was on the second floor, past the fitness center and the pool. When we walked in, Allison was already seated at the head of the table with her rolling cart next to her and the 3 color-coded binders stacked in front of her. There were 2 other people in the room, a man in his 60s wearing a polo shirt with a Cedar Springs logo, and a woman in her 40s with a tablet. Allison looked up. "You are early," she said. I said the notice said 7. She smiled. "The hearing starts at 7, but we need time to review your appeal first." I asked who the other 2 people were. The man introduced himself as Phil, the treasurer. The woman said her name was Dana and that she was taking minutes. I sat down across from Allison and set my binder on the table. Sarah sat next to me. Allison opened one of her binders and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "This is your appeal," she said. "I have reviewed it, and I am denying it on the grounds that it is incomplete." I asked what was missing. She pointed to a line near the bottom of the form. "You did not include a notarized signature," she said. I stared at her. The appeal form did not require a notarized signature. I had filled out every field, attached all my evidence, and submitted it on time. I pulled out my copy of the violation policy and flipped to the appeals section. "It says nothing about a notarized signature," I said. She shrugged. "That is the new requirement as of last month," she said. I asked to see the updated policy. She said it had not been posted yet, but that it was in effect. I looked at Phil. "Is that true?" I asked. He shifted in his chair. "I was not aware of a policy change," he said. Allison cut him off. "It was approved at the last committee meeting," she said. Phil did not say anything. I opened my binder and pulled out the first tab. "This is the access log from the resident portal," I said. "It shows I was not on property the night the cash box disappeared." Allison glanced at it. "That does not prove anything," she said. "You could have given your fob to someone else." I pulled out the second tab. "This is the email chain with the management office," I said. "It shows the clubhouse cameras were offline the night of the theft, and that you submitted the maintenance work order." She leaned back. "Routine maintenance," she said. I pulled out the third tab. "This is the ledger export," I said. "It shows 8 petty cash replenishments in the last year totaling nearly $1,500. That is not routine." Phil leaned forward and looked at the printout. "I was not aware of that," he said. Allison waved her hand. "Petty cash gets used," she said. "That is what it is for." I pulled out the fourth tab. "These are 10 complaint forms from the past 6 months," I said. "Every single one has a 5-day cure period, and every single one is signed by you with no co-signature from the board president. That violates the policy." Dana stopped typing and looked at Allison. Allison's face went red. "Those are internal committee documents," she said. "You do not have authorization to access those." I said they were on the resident portal in the committee files section. Phil picked up his phone and started scrolling. Allison stood up. "This hearing is over," she said. "Your appeal is denied, and your fine is due in 2 days. If you do not pay, I will file a lien and begin towing proceedings." I stayed seated. "I am not paying," I said, "and I am filing a formal complaint with the board president as soon as he returns." Allison grabbed her folder organizer and pointed it at me. "If you fight me, I will make it worse," she said. She walked out of the room. Phil and Dana sat there in silence. Phil finally spoke. "I think we need to table this until Greg gets back," he said. I asked when that would be. He said Thursday. I thanked him and left with Sarah. Outside the clubhouse, Sarah grabbed my arm. "She just threatened you in front of witnesses," she said. "I know," I said. We got in the car and drove home. That night I could not sleep again. I kept thinking about the hearing and how Allison had tried to shut me down with a fake notary requirement. She was not even pretending to follow the rules anymore. She was making them up as she went, and no one was stopping her. The next morning I woke up to a text from an unknown number. It said, "This is Jenna from the pool. I saw what Allison did at the hearing. I have something you need to see. Meet me at the mailbox cluster at noon." I showed Sarah the text. She said I should go but take my phone and record everything. I agreed. At noon, I walked to the mailbox cluster. Jenna was there, a woman in her 30s wearing a Cedar Springs staff polo. She worked as the pool attendant, and I had seen her around but never talked to her. She handed me a manila envelope. "What is this?" I asked. "Copies of vendor invoices," she said. "Allison has been ordering supplies through the social committee budget and then reselling them. She also pockets cash from event ticket sales and reports lower numbers to the treasurer." I opened the envelope. Inside were 3 invoice packets, each with sections covered by sticky notes that said confidential. I asked how she got these. Jenna said she worked the front desk sometimes and had access to the filing cabinet. She said Allison did not know the front desk staff made copies of everything. I asked if she would be willing to testify. She shook her head. "I cannot," she said. "I need this job, but you can use those. Just do not say where you got them." I thanked her and put the envelope in my jacket. I went back to my unit and opened the envelope on the kitchen table. The first invoice was from a party supply vendor. It showed an order for $200 worth of decorations, but the receipt attached to it showed a refund of $150 2 weeks later. The second invoice was from a catering company. It showed a deposit of $300 for an event, but the event roster attached to it showed only 15 attendees when the invoice claimed 30. The third invoice was from a locksmith. It showed a charge of $120 for duplicate keys, but there was no work order attached, and no explanation of which locks were rekeyed. I took photos of all 3 packets and added them to my evidence folder. Then I texted Jenna and thanked her again. She replied, "Allison does not run the gate." That was the extra detail I needed. The missing fob was not my problem. It was hers. On Thursday morning, I got an email from Monica. Greg was back, and he wanted to meet with me and Allison together at the management office at 2 that afternoon. I replied confirming I would be there. I printed a second copy of all my evidence and put it in a red binder. At 1:45, I drove to the management office. Greg was waiting in the lobby, a man in his 50s with gray hair and a Cedar Springs polo. He shook my hand and led me into a small conference room. Allison arrived 5 minutes later with her rolling cart. She did not look at me. Greg sat down at the head of the table and opened a file folder. I have reviewed the complaint and the appeal, he said. I also spoke with Phil about the hearing on Monday. I want to hear from both of you, and then I am going to make a decision. Allison went first. She repeated her story. The cash box was missing. A torn package with my address was found near my parking spot. A gate fob was missing and I had requested a replacement, and I refused to cooperate with the investigation. Greg asked what cooperation I had refused. She said I would not consent to a search of my unit. I interrupted. She never asked for a search, I said, and even if she did, she does not have the authority to demand one. Greg nodded and turned to me. Tell me your side, he said. I opened my red binder and walked Greg through every piece of evidence. The access log showing I was not on property. The email chain showing Allison took the cameras offline. The ledger export showing 8 petty cash replenishments. The 10 complaint forms with illegal 5-day cure periods. The vendor invoice packets showing refunds and missing documentation. Greg listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Allison, he said, do you have an explanation for the petty cash replenishments? She said they were for routine expenses. He asked for receipts. She said they were filed with the treasurer. Greg pulled out his phone and called Phil. He put it on speaker. Phil answered. Phil, this is Greg, he said. Do you have receipts for the petty cash replenishments over the past year? There was a pause. I have some, Phil said. But not all of them. Allison told me she would provide the rest later. Greg thanked him and hung up. He looked at Allison. You are suspended from all committee duties pending a full audit, he said. You are also required to return your access credentials and your gate fob by the end of the day. Allison stood up. You cannot do this, she said. Greg did not flinch. I can, and I am, he said. The board will meet next week to review the audit findings and determine next steps. If you do not comply, I will file a police report. Allison grabbed her cart and stormed out. The door slammed behind her. Greg turned to me. I am sorry this happened, he said. Your fine is voided, and your record is cleared. I will also be recommending policy changes to prevent this from happening again. I thanked him and left. Outside the building, I called Sarah. It is over, I said. She started crying. I drove home and collapsed on the couch. For the first time in 2 weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But I was not done yet. Allison had tried to ruin me, and I wanted to make sure everyone knew what she had done. That night, I wrote a detailed summary of the entire conflict and attached all my evidence. I submitted it to the board as a formal complaint and requested that it be read at the next board meeting. I also emailed a copy to every board member individually. Then I posted a sanitized version on the Cedar Springs community app with a note that residents should review their own violation notices to make sure they were following proper procedure. The comments started rolling in within minutes. Other residents came forward with their own stories of Allison's abuses. One person said she had tried to fine them for a holiday wreath. Another said she had threatened to tow their guest's car during a family visit. A third said she had banned them from using the pool for a week because their kid was too loud. The thread grew to over 100 comments in 2 hours. The board meeting was the following Tuesday. I did not attend, but Sarah did. She recorded the whole thing on her phone. Greg read my complaint out loud, including the evidence. Then he announced the results of the audit. The HOA had lost just over $2,000 in the past 18 months due to unaccounted petty cash withdrawals, fraudulent vendor refunds, and missing event revenue. Allison was present at the meeting, sitting in the back row. When Greg finished, she stood up and tried to speak. Greg cut her off. You are not recognized, he said. Sit down or leave. She left. The board voted unanimously to terminate her from all committee positions, to revoke her portal access, and to file a demand letter for repayment of the missing funds. They also voted to update the access control policy to require 2 signatures on all violation notices, and to extend the default cure period to 15 days. Sarah sent me the video that night. I watched it 3 times. The next day, I got a text from Jenna. Allison tried to return to the clubhouse this morning, she said. Security would not let her in. She stood outside yelling for 10 minutes before she left. Jenna attached a photo. It showed Allison at the front entrance with her folder organizer, shouting at a security guard who was holding his hand up. I saved the photo. 3 days later, I was leaving for a night shift when I saw Allison at the gate entry lane. She was standing next to her car, which was stopped at the gate arm, and she was on her phone yelling at someone. I pulled up behind her in line. A small crowd of cars formed behind me. The gate arm did not move. Allison got out of her car and walked up to the keypad. She swiped her fob. Nothing happened. She swiped again. Still nothing. She pulled out her phone and made another call. I could hear her through my open window. "This is Allison Drake," she said. "My fob is not working." The person on the other end said something. She shouted back, "I am the social committee chair. You need to fix this now." The person said something else. Allison's face went red. "That is not true," she said. "I was not suspended." Then a deputy's car pulled up from the other direction, lights flashing. The deputy got out and walked over to Allison. "Ma'am, you need to move your vehicle," he said. She spun around. "I live here," she said. He asked for her ID. She handed it to him. He radioed something in, then handed it back. "Your access has been revoked," he said. "You need to leave the property." She started shouting again. "This is illegal," she said. "I am filing a complaint." The deputy pulled out his notepad. "I am documenting this interaction," he said. "If you do not leave, I will cite you for trespassing." I got out of my car and walked up. The deputy looked at me. "Do you live here?" he asked. I said yes and showed him my ID. He asked if I had witnessed the interaction. I said I had just arrived, but that I could provide context. I pulled out my phone and opened the video Sarah had taken at the board meeting. I played the part where Greg announced Allison's suspension and access revocation. The deputy watched it and nodded. He turned back to Allison. "Ma'am, your access has been revoked by the HOA board," he said. "You need to leave now, or I am issuing a citation." Allison tried to grab my phone. I stepped back. The deputy stepped between us. "Do not touch him," he said. He wrote something in his notepad and handed her a slip of paper. "This is your incident number," he said. "If you want to dispute this, you can file a complaint with the management office." Allison took the paper and got back in her car. She reversed out of the lane and drove off. The deputy walked back to his car and left. The gate arm lifted. I got back in my car and drove through. The cars behind me honked and waved. That night, Sarah and I sat on the couch and watched the video I had taken of the gate confrontation. She was laughing so hard she was crying. The best part, she said, is that she kept talking even after he told her he was documenting everything. I nodded. That was the moment. The deputy wrote the incident number while Karen tried to talk over me, and every word she said made it worse. The next week, the HOA sent out a mass email to all residents. It announced that the access control system had been updated and that all fobs would be reissued with new serial numbers to prevent cloning. It also announced that the violation policy had been revised to require a 15-day cure period and 2 board member signatures on all notices. The email did not mention Allison by name, but everyone knew. The comments on the community app were brutal. People were sharing their own stories and calling for a full investigation into past violations. The board responded with a second email announcing a forensic audit of the past 2 years of social committee finances. The audit took 6 weeks. The final report was 23 pages long and documented over $4,500 in missing funds. The report included vendor receipts, ledger entries, and a timeline of fraudulent transactions. It also included screenshots of portal activity showing Allison had deleted access log entries and edited resident records without authorization. The board voted to file a civil claim for repayment and to refer the matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges. I got a copy of the report in my mailbox. I read it cover to cover. Then I filed it in my evidence binder. A month later, I ran into Jenna at the mailbox cluster. She was checking her mail and saw me coming. "Hey," she said. "I heard Allison moved out." I asked if it was true. She nodded. "She put her unit up for sale last week," she said. "I heard she is moving to Nevada." I asked if the board got any of the money back. Jenna said they settled for half. Allison agreed to pay $2,200 over 6 months in exchange for the board dropping the criminal referral. I asked if she was banned from the HOA. Jenna laughed. "Banned, trespassed, and flagged in the access system," she said. "If she tries to come back, security calls the cops." I thanked her for the update and went back to my unit. That night, Sarah and I went out to dinner to celebrate. Over dessert, she asked if I was going to stay at Cedar Springs. I said I was not sure. The whole thing had been exhausting, and I did not know if I wanted to live somewhere with that much drama. She said she understood, but that I had done the right thing. "You stood up to her," Sarah said. "And you won." I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I did." 2 months later, the board sent out another email. It announced that the HOA was implementing a new complaint process that required all violation notices to be reviewed by a third-party management company before being issued. It also announced that the social committee would be dissolved and its duties transferred to a new events coordinator hired by the management company. The email included a link to a feedback survey asking residents to share their experiences with past violations. I filled out the survey and attached my evidence binder as a PDF. A week later, I got a call from the new management company. They said they were reviewing historical violations and that mine had been flagged as improperly handled. They asked if I wanted to file a formal complaint. I said I already had. They said they would follow up. 3 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from the management company. The letter said my violation had been overturned, my record had been expunged, and I was eligible for a refund of any fees paid. I had not paid any fees, so there was no refund. But the letter also said the board had voted to issue a formal apology for the mishandling of my case. The apology was attached as a separate document, signed by all 5 board members. I read it twice and then filed it in my binder. 6 months after the gate confrontation, I was walking to my car when I saw a moving truck in the parking lot. It was parked in front of Allison's old unit. A young couple was unloading boxes. I walked over and introduced myself. They said they had just bought the unit and were moving in that weekend. I asked if they knew about the HOA drama. They laughed. "The realtor told us," the husband said. "That is why we got such a good deal." I wished them luck and walked back to my car. That night, Sarah asked if I had any regrets. I thought about it. I said I regretted not acting sooner, but I did not regret fighting back. She nodded. "You did what you had to do," she said. "And now it is over." I agreed. It was over. Allison was gone, the HOA was under new management, and the portal delete trick was exposed. My name was cleared on record, and the access control rules had been updated to prevent anyone else from cloning fobs or manipulating logs. The whole mess had taken 3 months, cost me countless hours of sleep, and nearly destroyed my relationship, but in the end, I won. A year later, I was still living at Cedar Springs. The new management company had cleaned house. The events coordinator was professional and stayed out of everyone's business. The board had cycled through 2 new members, and Greg had stepped down as president. The new president was a retired accountant who ran the meetings like a corporate audit, and it was boring in the best possible way. The community app was quiet. The complaint threads had died down. People still griped about parking and noise, but there were no more witch hunts, no more fake violations, and no more Allison. I ran into Phil at the clubhouse one afternoon. He was leaving a finance meeting. He stopped when he saw me. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For calling out the petty cash thing," he said. "I had no idea it was that bad. The audit saved the HOA from a much bigger mess." I told him I was just protecting myself. He nodded. "Still," he said, "you did the right thing." He shook my hand and left. I went upstairs to the gym and ran on the treadmill for an hour. When I got home, Sarah was cooking dinner. She asked how my day was. I said it was good. She smiled. "No drama?" she asked. "No drama," I said. The following month, I got an email from a law firm. It said they were representing Allison in a dispute with the HOA and that I might be called as a witness. I forwarded the email to Greg. He replied an hour later saying the board's attorney was handling it and that I did not need to do anything unless I was formally subpoenaed. I never heard from the law firm again. A few weeks later, Greg sent me another email. He said the case had been settled and that Allison had agreed to a payment plan and a permanent ban from all HOA property. He thanked me again for my documentation and said it had been critical in proving the board's case. I printed the email and added it to my binder. The binder now had over 200 pages of evidence, reports, and correspondence. I kept it on the shelf in my home office just in case. Sarah asked if I was ever going to get rid of it. I said probably not. "It is a reminder," I said. "Of what?" she asked. "That you can fight back," I said, "and win." 2 years after the gate confrontation, I was sitting in the clubhouse lobby waiting for a maintenance appointment when I saw a familiar face. It was Dana, the woman who had taken minutes at the hearing. She was sitting at a table with a clipboard and a stack of forms. She looked up and saw me. She waved me over. "I need your signature," she said. "For what?" I asked. "New vendor contract," she said. "The board is switching landscaping companies and we need approval from all residents." I signed the form. She thanked me and handed me a receipt. Then she leaned in. "I am glad you are still here," she said. "A lot of people moved out after that mess with Allison." I said I thought about it. She nodded. "I do not blame you," she said, "but you should know. The board is a lot better now. We actually follow the rules." I smiled. "That is good to hear," I said. She went back to her clipboard and I left. The HOA is forced to update access control rules after the key mess is exposed. That was the line I kept coming back to. The whole conflict had started because Allison could not stand anyone questioning her authority, and it ended because she got caught manipulating the system. The portal delete trick, the fake petty cash replenishments, the fraudulent vendor refunds, it all came out because I refused to back down. And the best part was the karma. Karen's favorite witness refuses to back her up on camera. Jenna had handed me the vendor invoices, and without that, I might not have had enough proof to convince Greg. A vendor refusing to cooperate without proper authorization. That was what finally broke Allison's grip on the HOA. She had tried to use the management office, the security staff, and even a tow company to intimidate me. But when the vendors started asking for signed work orders and proper documentation, her whole scheme fell apart. The deputy writes the incident number while Karen tries to talk over me. That moment at the gate was the final humiliation. She had spent weeks threatening me, framing me, and trying to destroy my reputation, and in the end, she was the one who got escorted off the property and cited for trespassing. I still see people from the HOA around the neighborhood. Most of them do not bring up the Allison situation anymore, but every once in a while someone will stop me and say they heard what happened and that they were glad I fought back. A few months ago, I was at the grocery store and ran into the pool attendant who says Karen does not run the gate. She was standing in the checkout line. She recognized me and waved. I walked over. "I never got to thank you properly," I said. She smiled. "You do not need to," she said. What Allison was doing was wrong and someone had to stop her. I asked if she still worked at Cedar Springs. She said she did. I told her I appreciated her help. She said it was no problem. Then she leaned in and whispered. "Between you and me," she said, "Allison tried to get her job back last month. She called the management company and claimed she had been wrongfully terminated. The manager laughed and hung up on her. I laughed too. That sounds about right," I said. Sarah and I got engaged 6 months after the hearing. We had dinner at the same restaurant where we celebrated the settlement, and I proposed over dessert. She said yes. We are getting married next spring, and we are staying at Cedar Springs for now. The HOA drama scared us both, but we decided that running away was not the answer. The neighborhood is quiet now, the management is competent, and the rules are actually being enforced fairly. That is all I ever wanted. A few weeks ago, I got a letter from the district attorney's office. It said they had reviewed the HOA's complaint about Allison and decided not to file criminal charges due to insufficient evidence of intent. The letter said the civil settlement was enough to resolve the matter. I was not surprised. The evidence was strong, but proving criminal intent is hard, and Allison had been careful to cover her tracks. The important thing was that she was gone, the money was paid back, and the HOA had fixed the policies that let her get away with it for so long. Last month, the board held an open forum to discuss long-term improvements to the HOA's governance. I attended with Sarah. The meeting was in the clubhouse, and about 40 residents showed up. Greg was there, even though he was no longer president. He stood up and gave a short speech about the importance of transparency and accountability. Then he opened the floor for questions. Someone asked if the board was going to release the full audit report. The new president said yes, it would be posted on the portal by the end of the week. Someone else asked if there were any other financial irregularities. The treasurer said no. The forensic audit had covered everything. A third person asked if Allison could ever come back. The president said no. She was permanently banned, and that ban was legally enforceable. The room erupted in applause. After the meeting, I walked up to Greg. "I wanted to thank you," I said. He shook his head. "You did the hard part," he said. I just listened. "I appreciated that," I said. He nodded and walked out. Sarah grabbed my hand. "Ready to go home?" she asked. I said yes. I still think about the whole mess sometimes, usually late at night when I cannot sleep. I think about how close I came to just paying the fine and moving on, and how different things would be if I had. Allison would still be running the social committee, still stealing, still framing people, and still getting away with it. The HOA would still be bleeding money, the residents would still be terrified of violating invisible rules, and I would still be looking over my shoulder every time I left my unit. Instead, I fought back. I gathered evidence, I stayed calm, I documented everything, and I forced the board to see what was really happening. It cost me sleep, it strained my relationship, and it made me a target for Allison's vindictive campaign, But in the end, it was worth it. The portal delete trick is exposed, management locks Karen out of admin access, and my name is cleared on record. That was the outcome. That was the win. And it was not luck. It was preparation, persistence, and a refusal to back down. The funny thing is, I never set out to take down Allison. I just wanted to clear my name and stop her from finding me for something I did not do. But once I started digging, I realized the problem was so much bigger than me. She had been running the same scam on other residents for over a year, and no one had fought back because they were scared, or because they did not have the time, or because they did not know how. I had the time, I had the anger, and I had the documentation skills. So I did it. I took her down. And the best part is, I did it all legally. No vandalism, no fraud, no violence, just a binder full of evidence, a few strategic emails, and a willingness to show up and make her answer for what she did. That is the revenge. That is the payback. She tried to ruin me, and instead, she ruined herself. Karen tries to confiscate my evidence binder and it gets photographed instantly. That moment in the hearing when she stood up and tried to grab my binder, and Dana took a photo of it with her tablet, that was perfect. That photo ended up in the audit report as evidence of Allison's intimidation tactics, and it helped convince the board to suspend her immediately. I kept every piece of documentation. The printed access logs, the email chains, the vendor invoices, the complaint forms, the ledger exports, the audit report, the settlement agreement, the apology letter, all of it. My evidence binder is now 3 inches thick, and I keep it on the top shelf of my office. Sarah asked me once if I was ever going to throw it away. I said no. She asked why. I said because someday, someone else is going to be in the same situation I was in, and they are going to need to know that it is possible to win. And when that happens, I am going to hand them my binder and say, "Here is how you do it." She smiled. "You are a good person," she said. I shrugged. "I am just someone who hates bullies," I said. And Allison was a bully. She used her position, her access, and her knowledge of the system to terrorize people, and she got away with it for a long time because no one had the courage or the resources to stop her. I had both, and I used them. That is all. A few days ago, I got an email from someone I did not know. The subject line said, "Thank you." I opened it. The email was from a resident in another HOA in Salt Lake City. He said he had heard about what happened at Cedar Springs from a friend, and that he was dealing with a similar situation. His HOA president was threatening him with fines for parking violations that did not exist, and he did not know what to do. He asked if I had any advice. I wrote back and attached a PDF of my evidence binder. I told him to document everything, to request copies of all policies in writing, to gather witnesses, and to never back down. I also told him to file complaints with the management company and the board, and to make sure every interaction was on the record. He replied an hour later and said thank you. I felt good about that. If my experience could help even one other person stand up to a corrupt HOA leader, then it was worth it. Last week, Sarah and I were sitting on the porch watching the sunset. She asked me if I was happy. I said I was. She asked if I had any regrets. I thought about it. I said I regretted that it took so long and that I had to go through so much stress to get there, but I did not regret fighting back. She nodded. "Good," she said, "because you saved a lot of people from going through what you went through." I said, "I hoped so." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "I am proud of you," she said. I smiled. "Thanks," I said. We sat there for a while, not talking, just watching the light fade over the mountains. It was peaceful. It was quiet. And it was ours. The whole thing taught me something important. You do not have to accept abuse just because it is coming from someone in a position of authority. HOAs, bosses, landlords, they all rely on the assumption that you will not fight back because it is too hard or too expensive or too risky. But sometimes, fighting back is the only option. And if you do it smart, if you document everything and stay calm and use the system against them, you can win. I won. Allison lost. The HOA is better. And I can sleep at night knowing I did the right thing. That is enough. Keep your cool, and I will see you next time.